7:03 Pacific. Cool. It's 7:03 Pacific time, so let's get started on today's session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar. My name is CJ. I will be your moderator for today's session. Let me do a quick introduction before we start it. We are a company called Eno Education. We specialize in the U.S. college admission planning with decades of experience. We help students prepare these applications, enhance their background, and help students to get the better results of U.S. college admission. So for our summer sessions, this is our third of fourth of our summer sessions. The first one is about personal insights question. Then last Saturday, we talk about common application. And today's session is about activity and a resume. And the last one going to be about supplement essay. We are very excited to have many of our 9th grade to 11th grade students joining us tonight. It is never too early to start preparing. As we mentioned in our poster, many students and their family often ask is, why did someone with better grades but end up with worse college results? Or I have done so many activities, but why did them seem not too helpful? So we're gonna answer these questions in tonight's session. We're gonna dive into them very deep tonight, and we'll learn what type of activities can really help your application stand out, how to choose them wisely during high school, and how to present them effectively, especially when it comes to the writing. So I encourage you to take notes. If you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat box. We will have dedicated time towards the end of the presentation for Q&A. Just feel free to drop them in the chat box. So without further delay, let me hand over to Jose, who is our main presenter for today's session.
All right. Well, good evening, and thank you, CJ, for that introduction. As CJ mentioned, we're going to talk about college application and the activity section in the different applications, such as the Common App and the University of California. For those of you who do not know me, I've been working with high school students since the last century for about 25 years, both as a private college counselor and as a public high school counselor. And my bachelor's degree is in speech communication, and I have 2 master's degrees, one in counseling and guidance and the other in educational administration. And it's always important for me and my philosophy in working with students that you start with the big picture in mind. In other words, where do you want to be 4, 5, 6 years from now? And then chart a way to be able to reach that goal. When we look at the activities for the applications, there are different categories. There are academic honors, such as perhaps national merit. It could be honor roll. It could be the presidential volunteer. And then there are activities such as employment, athletics. So we're going to look at each of the 2 main application platforms to see how they categorize them and see how it all fits together. So for the University of California, and this is very important, and I'm glad that there are some underclassmen here, you are allowed to enter up to 20 activities, and you need to describe those with 350 characters, not words, with actual characters. Whereas on the Common App, and remember, we looked at the Common App last week for those of you who were in attendance. The Common App is an application platform that you can use to apply up to 1,000 schools, but they only limit you to 10 activities and 150 characters. So for the University of California, the one application where you list all your activities will go to all 9 campuses, assuming you apply to all 9 campuses. And then the Common App will go to all the schools that you list on your Common App. It might be 1 school, it could be 20 schools. Keep this in mind, and I was speaking a little bit with Scarlett before this, is that you don't need any proof per se. You do not need certificates, but you might be randomly audited. So what that means college admissions is like the IRS. We're all required to file taxes. Every now and then, the IRS might want proof of our tax deductions. Likewise, with college admissions, they may ask for proof. Were you actually in marching band? Did you actually win this award? Everything that you put down is based upon your word. You do not need to submit proof. You do not need to submit hours. You do not need to submit pictures. However, in my 25 years or so, I can recall, I think, twice where a student has been audited. One student was a very competitive marching band, and we sent in yearbook pictures to show that she was in marching band all 4 years of high school. So that would be an example of providing proof. So again, you might be audited, but chances are very, very slim. The other thing is that you don't want to repeat information in the description or title or anything that you've written about. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at the UC PIQs, in which you can choose 4 out of 8 prompts. Do not repeat any information verbatim that is in the PIQ because you're not making the most of the word count. Also, do not exaggerate. It's important that you state facts and do not exaggerate. And as I've said before, in all of my essay presentations, avoid words like got. Use words like earned and received. So many kids say, I got a 5 on the AP exam. And my question is, where did you get it from? And so you want to, even in your activity description, use vocabulary that is elevated, that is sophisticated, and that is at a collegiate level. So when we look at the University of California, and again, this is online campuses ranging from Berkeley, UCLA, Merced, Riverside, Santa Cruz, and so on. Remember, they looked at 13 factors for admission. Now, I want you to look at the blue highlighted areas. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see that it's achievements in special projects is a criteria for admission, performance in academic subject areas, and then special talents, achievements, and awards, participation in educational preparation programs, and academic accomplishments within contents of life experiences. So you could be the recipient of a scholarship. You may have won a talent show. You could have earned the College Board AP exam award with distinction. It could be any of those things. So just keep that in mind. So with a comprehensive review, you don't necessarily want to state your GPA or the courses that you've taken in the activity section because they will have that already. But what you do want to highlight would be achievements, performance in certain areas, talents, awards, some educational programs, and even employment. When the University of California is looking at your application, they're looking for a commitment. How long have you been doing this activity? How much time do you commit per week? And I'll show you a little bit later that you actually have to break down how many hours per week and how many weeks per year. Then they look at progression. Are you constantly growing this? Are you demonstrating growth? And then you have leadership. So for example, let's just say all of you who are freshmen right now, for your freshman year, you may join a club and you're just a member of that club and you dedicate 1 to 2 hours, possibly a week for an entire school year. Well, maybe your sophomore year, you end up running for office and maybe you're the treasurer, the secretary, or the vice president. You're continuing in that club and then maybe you show growth that when you write in your activity description, for example, when I first started attending FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, I was a quiet freshman and there were only 10 kids in the club. Wanting to make a difference, I continued in that club onto 10th grade and ran for the office of vice president. As vice president, the club grew to, and then you could say twice as large. So maybe there's 20 kids now. And then maybe your junior year, you entered a competition with others in the district, and then you network. So again, anything that you do, especially right now, if you're a freshman or sophomore, try to stick to it. Don't try something new. Let me restate that. Don't abandon things that you've been committed to since you started high school. Try to show a commitment, progression, and eventual leadership. All applications are due in the fall of your senior year. And so even seniors right now during the summer, you could continue to build upon some of your activities and hopefully show leadership. So this is the goal, a commitment to something, progression, such as being a class officer, and then leadership. All right, it's also important that you have quality over quantity. So remember, all students can enter up to 20 activities and awards across 6 different categories. And the UC campuses state that they have no preference for the type of involvement. And I'll show you a better picture in just a moment in terms of how you would put that in. But when I say quality over quantity, I know many times students may help once at a park cleanup. They may help once at a soup kitchen, say over Thanksgiving, at a homeless shelter. They may help once handing out blankets to people on the street. They might help once with a beach cleanup. That's a lot of little things, and the universities are all looking for a few things in which you've done a lot of depth and commitment. So very important that those of you watching, especially if you're underclassmen, rather than just doing a beach cleanup once a year, maybe you go to a beach cleanup and you recruit more people. And then what you clean up at the beach, maybe you eventually recycle. And the money that you make from recycling, from cleaning up at the beach, is then invested into maybe different trash cans, a golf cart, different types of, I don't know what they're actually called, but it's like a stick where you grab something so you don't have to bend over. And then you show a development. And that's what we mean by quality over quantity. So there's nothing wrong with helping out at a soup kitchen or giving out blankets to the homeless in the winter. However, if you're only doing that once a year, that's not significant. What would be significant is that maybe you recruit people. Maybe you go to Trader Joe's and you take the expired food from the shelf and then you hand it out to the homeless. And then that grows. So again, you want to show a development in the activities that you are doing. All right. So again, these are the categories within the University of California. Awards and honors. So again, that would be honor roll. It could be perfect attendance. Then you have educational prep programs. This could be an internship, maybe something that you've done at a college to prepare you. It could be attending tutoring programs. And then extracurricular activities. This is where the bulk of them come in. Hobbies, sports, something that isn't part of the regular school day. It could be academia. It could be robotics, anything of that nature that you would put that in extracurricular activities. Other coursework, especially like a community college course that maybe doesn't appear on your transcript, or courses through Coursera or even BYU. So you can add that in there. Then there's volunteering and community service, in which you donate your time. So that would be the example that I gave, such as a beach cleanup or helping at a homeless shelter. And then there's work experience, which is paid, okay, not unpaid. If you are doing work and you are not getting paid, that falls under volunteering and community service. If you have actual employment, then you would put that there. And a lot of students actually undermine the value of employment. I have a student who ended up going to UC San Diego, and she wrote about working at an ice cream shop and how she was able to balance the register and then write down shifts for her coworkers, and how she was a supervisor. And it was an ice cream shop, actually, but it still stands out to me because she didn't write about just, I work 10 hours a week. She wrote, I first started out as cleaning up in the back and then progressed to being able to be at the register. And I noticed that every night we were short or under Then I was promoted to assistant supervisor, where I was being able to organize my coworkers and assign them shifts. So again, that's an example of progression and growth. So if you are employed right now, I would say see if you can stick with that throughout your high school career. The other thing, and we're going to talk about this in 2 weeks, is that adults in the community that you build relationships with over time would be perfect individuals to write letters of recommendation for you for private schools. And so sometimes it's very good to be involved in these activities, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, different athletics, so that somebody, an adult outside of the classroom, we call it an other recommender or outside recommender. Usually we see it as OR, could write about you in a different perspective than just a teacher. Let me go ahead and switch my screen. So one of the things is, again, consistency. So don't forget about your senior year. One of the things that I see, and you might want to mute yourselves. We'll go ahead and then take questions at the end. One of the things about the activities is that I see students writing in past tense for activities that they're currently involved in, and that's a big mistake. So when you're writing about something during your senior year, if you're going to play volleyball, you would say, I am center, I am a setter, my role is an outside hitter. So you have to carefully look at how you write about that. And then the other thing is that they actually want you to calculate hours spent in the activities during the year. So those of you who especially are underclassmen, and really for anyone watching, keep a log of what you're doing and how much time you dedicate to it. It's great at least once a semester or every quarter that you write down what activities was I involved in this past semester. How many hours did I dedicate to this activity? How many weeks did I dedicate? Because all of those will need to be added up. I have a note here, double check time at the time of submission. If you are currently going into 12th grade, I really hope that you start working and completing the majority of your college application this summer. But remember, you may not submit that application until November. Therefore, up until now, you might have 50 hours of an activity. But if you continue that activity, when the school year starts, you might have 2 weeks in August, 4 weeks in September, 4 weeks in October, maybe another 3 weeks in November. Well, now you're looking at upwards of 12 weeks. And if you're doing that 10 hours a week, well, that's another 120 hours. So do not forget to calculate the number of hours at the time of submission, all right? And this is where an auditor comes in, meaning a party like a private counselor like myself, to make sure that everything is actually correct. You also need to write details, all right? So you might be thinking right now, as a sophomore, as a junior, man, I don't really know if I could have 20 activities. That's okay. Start thinking now about what you can do. You have 60 characters to name the activity. So it could be a sport, basketball. It could be dance team. It could be Akadeca. But you only have 60 characters to do that. Then you have 350 characters to describe that activity. And it's very important to use verbs in this. I will show you some examples in just a little bit, but think verbs, and you should focus on your experience, your role, and your responsibilities. Don't necessarily tell us about the club. For example, if you're in mock trial, don't say mock trial is a club that mimics the judicial system. What you would want to say is that in my role as a prosecutor in mock trial, I prepare cases each week, and then so on. It is, what is your role? What is your responsibility? What is your activity? Again, we go back to use me, myself, and I. When you write about awards, and they're going to ask you the level of recognition. Was it local? Was it just your school? Was it state? Was it community? Was it national? And then you have 250 characters for students to describe the organization or the eligibility requirements for an award. So those of you who are musicians and play piano, you might be certificate of level 10 certificate of merit. I believe that's what it's called for a musician, specifically piano. But what was the eligibility? I had to memorize a piece. I had to memorize different types of pieces ranging from classical music, such as Beethoven, to theory exams. So you actually want to describe what you did to compete for that award. So like AP scholar with distinction, a score of 3 or more on 5 or more AP exams. That would be an example of that. If you are working, colleges ask, how are you using your money? What do you use your money for? They look at that. Then there's the traditional versus non-traditional activities. In other words, how do you spend your time outside of the classroom? You might take care of a younger sibling. You might have grandparents who are in this country who speak no English, and maybe you take them to the store and you translate for them. That would be a commitment and activity you can write about. So don't think of activities restricted to what you only do at school, surrounding school, or employment. These activities that are non-traditional are also very valuable. In other words, how are you spending your time? Maybe you have to pick up your younger sibling from school and you can't participate in after-school sports because you have responsibilities to pick up your siblings from school every day and take them home and feed them because maybe you're at a single-parent household, whatever it might be. So again, think outside the box for that. If for some reason you can't think of 20 activities, that there's a lack of involvement, you might want to state that. Again, maybe your activity is employment. So my son has a good friend who works a lot to help sustain his family. It's a single parent household. And you can say, I am required to work 20 to 30 hours a week in order to help with expenses in my home. Therefore, I have been unable to participate in traditional school activities throughout my high school career. So it's important to address a lack of involvement. Now, if there's no excuse for a lack of involvement, especially those of you who are freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, you might want to think, what can I do next week? What can I do during the month of July and during the month of August to maximize these activities for when I will write about them when I apply to colleges in the fall of my senior year? So again, extremely, extremely important to think, what can I do now? Because coming up with 20 can actually be challenging. Some missed opportunities if you leave sections blank, assuming we know an acronym, CSF, a lot of people know, but you want to make sure that it's California Scholarship Federation or National Honor Society. Don't just write NHS because, again, you don't know who is reading your application. Your application could be read by somebody who graduated from college 5 years ago, or maybe even 20 years ago. All right. And so they may not be familiar with certain things. You need to have clarity on your roles and responsibilities and make sure that you spend time because that section is extremely important. And then the UCs especially want you to talk more about you than the activity. So like I said regarding mock trial, if we take another team like robotics, in the robotics club, which competes 2 times during the year at state competitions, robots are created. Well, they're telling them about robotics and not necessarily like my role in robotics is to wire the robot so that it maneuvers and avoids the obstacles. I accomplish this by, so again, it's me, myself, I do this. So very, very important. And then actually, and for those of you who are underclassmen as well, I would encourage you just, again, at the end of every semester or every quarter, just write the activities that you've been involved in and give them a description, because you might forget, because what happens is by the time you have to submit your college application, you're like, oh, what did I do my freshman year? And I know it was something. And so it's very important that you start developing this list now. So remember, you have 20 entries, but they are not mandatory. You do not have to enter all 20. But if you do, I would suggest and recommend that they be meaningful. All right. So you don't want to put, I ran errands for my family who was visiting from out of town, and bought ingredients for them. That's not a regular activity. So don't just fill in things for the sake of filling them in. Also, not all descriptions need to have all 350 characters. You just want to be clear and concise. And they're not even necessarily complete sentences. And I'll show you some examples in just a bit. Again, readers, this is common myth and misconceptions that readers only want to see school activities. That's not true. They want to know how you spend your time outside of school. There's really nothing more important than another one. And then sometimes you assume they're not really going to read it. That is not true. Remember, this is part of the 13 factors for the criteria for admission. So they will look at this extremely carefully. All right, so UC values academic and non-academic achievements. Remember, they want to see a commitment, leadership, and progression. Context and clarity are important, meaning what is your role in that activity? And again, think beyond school-based activities and awards. So it could be, again, music lessons. It might be sports outside of school, like Taekwondo. It could also be employment. It could be volunteering on a regular basis at maybe a senior citizen home. Okay, so all of those things are very important. I also want to give you all a little clue. There is a website called volunteermatch.org. It's www.volunteermatch.org. And you could put in the name of the city, and then there's a criteria button with more information. And one of those criteria is teens. So you would check that, and CJ and Scarlett, if there's time, I could show everyone the website. And then you could actually search for volunteer opportunities in your community. All right. And there's actually a search feature where you could put food, science, computers, animals, parks, beaches, and then it will populate that. So it's a great resource. Again, that's www.volunteermatch.org in order to start developing some of your activities. All right, so that was mainly for the University of California. The following here is that the Common App, again, is one application that goes out to everybody. So again, you want to keep that in mind when you write your activities. It's interesting. You could elaborate on an activity or experience using the additional information in the writing section, but that's just one if you wanted to elaborate more, because you are only allowed 150 characters. So what you want to do is first select your activity type, okay? And then again, this is a little bit different than the UC schools, and I have a worksheet that helps with this. You're only allowed 50 characters, 100 characters for the organization name, and this is very challenging. Only 150 characters to describe the activity, the honors won, and the accomplishments. When you use this, please use strong verbs, all right? That is extremely, extremely important. And that what you want to do is develop the content. Have you included your range of responsibilities? Did you problem solve? What did you do? And you want to demonstrate skills such as maybe mentoring, coaching, whatever that might be. So here is somebody who submitted something for the Common App. The original was, for 2 years, I volunteered at my local animal shelter. I helped out where needed, but mainly walked dogs and monitored the front desk. Last year, I was asked to take on more responsibility and have been volunteering as a receptionist during the weekends. So they used 256 characters, keeping it straight to the point. And this is where I said you don't need to use complete sentences that are They need to be understandable, but they don't all need to have a subject and verb. For example, volunteer at local animal shelter, walking dogs and running front desk. Given more responsibility last year and now volunteer as receptionist. So you can see how it's short and to the point. So the edited version fits the character limit and still gives important details. So if you look at the edited version, you have verbs such as volunteer, walking, running, and then given more responsibility. So again, you see that, and that's the goal that you want. So here's another one in terms of a member debate. Debated topics, attended tournaments, research topics. So that's very short, but what you might want to do is put, I lead research and case writing, mentor younger debate students, organize mock debates, host annual debate tournament, and then see additional info for awards, because this could be a crossover, meaning you could be on the debate team and have a role as a debater, but then your team could have won a tournament. So rather than put the two together, you could actually separate them and put one under awards. One of the ways to look at this is by listing what did you do, what problems did you solve, what lessons did you gain, what was your impact, and how you applied what you learned. So for example, what did I do? The key here is active verbs: mentored, taught, ran, hosted, operated, worked. Those are all things of what you did. The problems I solved could be at a personal level. It could be within your family, local community. So for example, work to provide healthy water. All right. And I'm going to give you an example in just a bit. But here is, that would be an example of maybe providing, there wasn't clean water in the water fountains at your school. So work to provide clean water. Lessons that I learned. So this is what you want to list, that what you learned. Learn how to work within the confines of school administration. The impact that I had in using the example of water is that now fresh water, fresh, clean, reverse osmosis water, or RO water, is available to all students on campus. How did I apply what I learned? I learned that some of these endeavors take time and careful planning. So again, you want to list what did you do? What were the problems that you solved? Lessons that you gained, the impact, and how you applied what you learned. Extremely challenging to do with only 150 characters. In other words, you can say, what did I do? List all your tasks. What did I forget? Go back and check. Did I list all tasks? What was within the scope and limits of my responsibility? Did I leave off any awards, any uncommon achievements? And this is where I say, ask your parents, because your parents love to brag about you. You could actually also go through your phone and look at all the pictures, or go through your parents' phone and what they took pictures of when you received the perfect attendance award, when you won the spelling bee, things since high school, when you came in first place at the tennis tournament, whatever it was. So you might forget. And so it's important to enlist the help of your parents, especially, and also the help of a phone that might have pictures to scroll back and to see what you've done. So again, we looked at this earlier, the problems you solved. Did I consider any internal problems, any personal challenges? Did I name the problems that you solved? Was it, rather than speaking with broad strokes, I helped my community? Well, what does that mean? That might mean I helped my soccer team because of the racial tensions and mediated problems. So again, those are some of the things that you want to do. I use soft skills. If you're into any type of technology, I learned certain software, languages. I learned how to use Photoshop, etc. It could even be things like survival skills. If you're in Boy Scouts, I can start a fire without matches. I've learned to survive in the wild. I know how to catch, clean, and cook a fish. Am I better now than I was before? What would I have done differently? So those are all things to include, and the impact that I had. How wide was that scope? Was it just your friend group? Was it your school? Who benefited from this? So all of those things you want to have on your activity list. What that you have done to make the community better. Did you advocate for other people? I know a lot of students who are very high achieving, who take time to work with students with disability and try to incorporate them into the larger population by having lunch with them or putting on perhaps a senior event for special education students. So that is actually something that is very valuable and shows a little bit of giving back to the community. And we touch on a little bit on a different type of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, family responsibilities come in many formats. So again, if you do this, you might care for younger children. I mentioned already supervising a younger sibling, assisting a grandparent or an older relative, maybe even taking food to a neighbor who's a shut-in or working to provide. So again, whatever it is that you do, please provide the details. Admissions officers, they need to understand what their responsibilities are because it is essential that they understand who you are as a person. Knowing more about your responsibilities at home helps put your academic achievements into a very good perspective. One of the things that you want to do, and I always encourage students to use Google Docs. So here's a Google Doc that I created. So that first column on your far left would be your UC activities. Go ahead and take a look at those. For your UC activity, you have one of 6 categories: award or honor, educational prep programs, extracurricular activity, other coursework, volunteer, community service, or work experience. When you fill out the Common App, these are all your choices. I won't read them all, but they go down from academic all the way down to other club or activity. So some of these, let's just say that you're in a sport, okay? So for the UC schools, that sport would be an extracurricular activity, whether it's soccer. But for the Common App, then it would be under athletics. Then you would try to describe that in 350 characters. I am captain of the soccer team, of which I've been a member for the last 2.5 years. My position is that of a goalie. And then you would describe that in 350 characters. Then you would cut that description down into 150 characters within the same column. And then both the UC school and both the Common App ask hours spent per week, weeks spent per year. All right. So then we take another thing. So let's just say we take piano. Well, piano playing under the UC school would be extracurricular activity. However, under the Common App, it would be music instrumental. All right. So again, this is a great worksheet to have and to use to list your activities with that. So work experience for the UC schools would fall under work paid for the Common App. Other coursework, depending on what that coursework is, it could fall either under like career oriented, or if depending on what that coursework was, if it was say a math class, then it would fall under science and math. So very good. One of the word of caution regarding hours spent per week, weeks spent per year, you need to make sure you add everything up so that it's reasonable. I had the opportunity about a year ago to work with a student. He ended up choosing not to work with me and completed most of his college application on his own. Well, as the months went by, this past spring came, and the family contacted me, and the family said he wasn't admitted to any colleges. We don't know why. Well, I said, well, I can look at his application. They contacted me so he could appeal his admission decisions. And I said, well, I need to see his application. So they sent me a PDF of his application. And then as I was looking at that, most of his activities were about 52 weeks per year. There are 52 weeks in a year. There are approximately 36 weeks in the school year, 18 weeks per semester, and then about 12 weeks or so in the summer. Well, he put down that he was working on research about 20 hours a week. And then he was another 10 hours a week was some athletic events. And then another 15 hours a week was employment. And then I added them up. He had about 60 hours of activities per week. And I asked him, when do you go to school? When I see this, these numbers are way inflated. And colleges will see right through that. Now, unfortunately for him, he did not have guidance. There was another student with whom I worked years ago, and she did something similar. It was like 20 hours of piano recitals in a week, another 10 hours a week working. Well, I'm like, that's 30 hours. And then, another club was 5 hours a week, now 25. I said, it looks like you don't have any time to go to school. So you need to be very, very careful when you put down the hours spent per week and the weeks spent per year. All right. So looking at this activity on that Google Sheet, this is how it would work. On the UC website or application, you would have, I lead a team of 6 robotic designers, facilitate systems integration, and mentor 10 to 15 young inventors weekly. I previously led, now past tense, a subsystem design team winning a first quality award for innovative design. How would you put that on the Common App? I lead robot design, facilitate systems integration, and mentor younger designers. I previously led a subsystem design team winning a first quality award. So 2 things I want you to note here. He's writing about what he does now, present tense. I lead a team of 6 robotic designers. But then what he previously did, I previously led. So again, showing past and present tense. And this is a great way to have something that is succinct when you have them side by side. Here's another one. Developed a Scour robotic arm from scratch as passion project. Design and printed 3D printed custom parts. Made a control system with Arduino and programmed all controls using self-taught custom inverse kinematics code, fostering a newfound love for independent learning. How does that fit on the Common App? Developed Scar robotic arm from scratch as passion project, designed 3D printed custom parts, made a control system with Arduino using custom inverse kinematics code. So again, great way to list all of your activities. I'll do a couple more. This is Boy Scouts. Co-led my patrol to winning the National Honor Patrol Award, organized campouts and hikes for fellow scouts, and volunteered 50+ hours at food drives and shelters to aid the homeless in my community, which developed a greater motivation to help others. On the Common App with 150 characters, co-led my patrol to winning the National Honor Patrol Award, organized campouts, hikes, and volunteered 50+ hours at food drives, shelters, etc. So again, this is a great way to list your activities for both applications. So in terms of like what you do and what you've done, when it says, please describe the organization, what you want to do is always put down what the word count is and then what your word count is. So here's a description: a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing healthcare and educational opportunities in rural communities in India. Annual fund run hosted throughout the country to raise funds for the event, helping over 6,000 children and families annually. All right, so that is a way. And then what should you do? I actually need to move my screen just a moment so I can read everything. As a Bay Area chapter volunteer, 10 years, I orchestrate the annual fund run with 800+ participants, leading meetings, securing sponsorships for food, designing and packaging shirts, photograph events, and managing media exposure on radio shows and social media, coordinating registration booths to ensure smooth execution. Notice the number of verbs that are used: orchestrate, leading, securing, designing, packaging, photograph, managing, coordinating. There are 8 verbs just in that description right there. And then below that, there is a Common App. So again, this is where verbs are extremely, extremely important. Again, here's another one. You don't need to use all 250 characters. HCCC, a nonprofit Hindu temple, a place of worship, as well as a place to preserve Indian culture in America through different events, teaching youth about Sanskrit heritage and offering services for the community. Again, notice the number of verbs that are highlighted here. Dedicated my time volunteering for over 10 years, teaching 15 students Sanskrit, leading religious chants, organizing events, helping in blood drives, and proctoring spelling bees with 100 participants. I assisted in community outreach initiatives by distributing 400 plus food packages in low-income neighborhoods, created 200 plus care packages for local homeless shelter, and curated interactive events like origami making with 50 plus senior citizens. Again, the details are extremely important. What did you do? How many people did you help? What was the extent of your volunteering? So all of these things you're going to want. So one way to list these as well. So for those of you who are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, really for anyone watching this, start tonight, start this week, list the activity. So this is another way that you can list it. 11th grade school year, 5 hours per week, 17 weeks per year, and continuing. So program attending, Stanford China Scholar Program. And then 1 out of 20, accepted to U.S.-China Relations Program, research on variable interest entities and Chinese economy, pending high school academic journal publication. So again, very short and to the point, and this is for the Common App. So again, these are just all the different things that you want to do. So again, you want to look at the activity. So in this case, in that first row, it's Destination College Advising Corps. Years participated, 12th grade. Hours per week, weeks per year. 1 hour per week, 32 weeks per year. Everyone can do this evening. You can put your activities together, what you've done thus far. Soccer. Years participated, all years in high school. 30 hours per week, 48 weeks per year. Again, activity, Overwatch tournament finalist winner. And again, it states 9th through 12th grade, 22 hours per week, 52 weeks per year. So again, this is one way for you to list all of your activities on a chart on a Google Sheet, just so that you can go ahead and participate in your activities. All right. So I've been doing a lot of talking, lots of information. CJ is going to help me with some of the questions in the chat. I could also look at them, and I will do my very, very best to answer them.
Cool. Fantastic. Jose, thank you so much. We do have a few questions in the chat box.
Okay. And CJ, I'm sorry,
yeah.
should I stop sharing and look at those, or should I just keep this on the screen?
Maybe you can keep it on the screen. I can read these questions to you.
Okay, very well. Okay.
Cool. All right. So the first one is coming from Jason Lee. I think this is probably about his own experience. So his question is about progression. For example, I'm a president of a club my junior and senior year, but I have participated all 4 years in this club. Since the description is limited, should I emphasize more on the impact I've made and what a club has achieved when I was president? Or should I just describe my participation as a member of fresh year and sophomore year?
So with careful work, you could just start off the name of the club and then put member 9th and 10th grade, elected to officer in 11th grade, and then state what position that was and the impact that was made. And maybe if there are any stats of how the club improved, doubled in size, participation, how much money was raised, etc. So again, you could put member in 9th and 10th grade. That would be sufficient. And maybe if you wanted to put a member in 9th and 10th grade, only attended weekly meetings, elected to, so in 11th grade. So yeah, but I would still mention that because that will show the progression. But you can do that in a very short way.
Cool. All right, second question. I've heard many times about the College Board AP Scholar with Distinction Award. The eligibility for this award is just 2 AP scores with a 3 or higher. If I submitted my AP scores to the schools, they've already see I'm qualified in terms of AP test. So I wouldn't be lame and wasting one reward box to write about that award.
If you do not, if you have more than 20, I would say do not include it. If you don't have, if you only have 15 and you're an AP scholar with distinction or whatever it might be, I would say go ahead and add that in because that's just one more factor of the criteria for admission. And they may not tabulate it as well. And again, remember, you do not know who is reading your application. Again, someone who graduated from UCLA 5 years ago, an alumni who graduated 20 years ago. And sometimes the criteria might change. So again, but yes, if the student has more than 20 activities, I will not include it. However, if they don't have that, it doesn't hurt to include it.
Cool. Thank you, Jose. So the next question maybe is you've already answered here. It's a similar situation. So it's about the National Scholar Reward. If I have a high SAT score, uh, would it be repetitive to put that as a reward? That's my opinion, but I also see students putting that for their rewards as well. So I'm a bit confused.
So for the Common App and certain schools, for example, USC, the University of Southern California, they really like national merit finalists and semifinalists. So typically, a student is either a commended student, a semifinalist, or a finalist, but typically they won't know if they're a finalist until after the applications are submitted. But the scores vary by school. So for example, the cutoff at one school, say in Southern California, is going to be different than the cutoff at a school in Nebraska or Texas or Florida. And so it measures you against your peers, which is actually very, very important. And so I would put that in there because, again, certain private schools really like to offer scholarships, and then they might just flag or put a check mark on your application. So I would definitely mention that in the Common App for sure, not necessarily the University of California, unless you have room and you don't have 20.
Ooh. Um, the Thank you, Jose. So the next question is about a particular example you have in your prior pages. Um, so there's a one sentence that you put is a role for senior year to be determined in the spring of 2024. Maybe Jose, it's helpful to go back to the prior page of the examples you give. It's about JV slash varsity lacrosse. Um,
It's not this one.
Not this one. Let's go a few pages prior. Oh yeah, this one. Um, no, next one.
Forward?
Yes, forward. Forward. Yes, this one.
Oh,
I
okay.
think the second example here and the second bullet point, the last sentence of it, the role for senior year to be determined in the
Oh,
spring
yes.
24. Yeah. So, what meaning did this sentence add? I thought it would be best to avoid these type of statements.
Okay, no, because so certain sports are only in the spring. So if you're playing football, when you submit your application, you know what your position, what your role is in the football team. If you're on soccer or lacrosse, it's a spring sport. Okay, so in this case, this person played their sophomore year, served as captain their junior year, but they're going to send. This was somebody who graduated in 2024, and so at the time when they submitted their college application in the fall of 2023, they didn't know what their role would be but they continued playing. So committed to 5 days a week, fostered collaboration, mentored, and united a diversity, and that was committed to working. So, for example, if you're, I believe, yeah, for most schools, tennis is a spring sport. So if you played tennis all 3 years, you can say I was started off with doubles, went to singles, um, tried for junior varsity. I will continue to play. However, I do not know which team placement undetermined until spring. In this case would be spring of 2026 for this school year. So again, you're showing that you're involved in something, but you don't know what your role will be. So you might run for captain, but you can't say you're going to be captain.
Cool.
So that's it, more or less. So for anyone this school year, if you're going into your senior year, it would be role for senior year to be determined in spring of 2026.
Great. Jose, thank you. So we have two more questions in the chat box. So let's maybe go through them in view of the time. So for any more questions coming later, please just contact your counselor. So Jose, two more questions. One is it's it's a question about commitment. So I was really passionate about some of my volunteer activities in sports, but because of my schedule, I stopped doing them for a relatively long period of time, or I started really late on them, but still has a lot of dedication and contribution. How would I make this kind of situation sound better in the application? And how do I emphasize my dedication?
Okay, so I would need a little bit more details, but I'll give you an example with a student that I am working with who has played basketball for many years and then is also in choir, and he was admitted into a prestigious a cappella performing group that conflicted with basketball. And so he said, due to a conflicting schedule, I had to make a choice and chose to, music performance because I knew I would not have a basketball career. So again, if it's because of a strong academic, it might be the time commitment required for me to perform well academically prevented me from participating in, and then you would fill in the blank, As I enter my senior year, I can now. So again, I would need to know more of the details of what it was, but it's how it is presented and how it is phrased on paper. It's not just I stopped doing this or I quit because it was too much. It was so for another student, I worked at a full international baccalaureate high school, and the student was admitted to Stanford, but she was admitted to Stanford as she was asked to be one of the main dancers in front of the marching band. We call it the Stanford Dollies. That required rigorous training, part of the dance team morning. And so she said, one of her essays was something like, I would have been full IB, but I had to dance all night or I had rehearsals. And then she said, chose to pursue professional dancing over the International Baccalaureate program due to the time commitments, and it benefited her. So in this case, an athletic type event over academic benefited her. She ended up enrolling in Stanford and was one of their four like baton twirlers in front of the marching band.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Jose. One last question. Does the Common App owners and the reward include a description section? How much characters are allowed in?
Okay, it's all would be 150. So there's a pull down menu, and then if there's a description for 150. So, and again, for the Common App, you have to be careful because if everyone watching is from California, you can't assume everyone's going to know what CSF is. California Scholarship Federation. You actually have to explain it if you've won an award. But yes, the Common App does have a pull down menu, and I believe it's just the 150.
Cool. Thank you, Jose. Um, Great. So we done all the questions. So if you have any more, please contact your counselor. In view of the time, we're gonna wrap up this
Okay.
yeah this
CJ,
session.
may I show something right away?
Sure. Yeah.
It'll just take a couple seconds. It'll just take a couple less than a minute. So this is a website, volunteermatch.org. Can you see it on the screen?
Yes.
And then what you want to do is put in where you live. So Irvine, the most important thing after hitting find opportunities is that you want to put more filters and pick teens. After that, you save it, and then there's all these things that come up. And then there's a search feature right here where you could put, say, maybe you're interested in something, and then it'll populate. So this is the volunteer match. But the most important thing is to put the filter that you're a teenager, and then that'll come up. So that's what I was referring to. So, and then see, provide friendly visits to hospice patients and their families, cat rescues, love dogs, and so on. So
Great. Cool. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the great session today. So thank you all for joining tonight. We hope this seminar give our 9th to 11th grade students a much clearer understanding of what types of activities that U.S. college are truly looking for, and and how to start preparing and planning this early. For our 12th grade students, we hope you are now have a deeper insights into the strategy behind the college applications and how to present your achievements in the way that really stands out. If you miss out any parts of the sessions or would like to review it again, a replay will be available. Please feel free to reach out to your counselor for access. One more thing I want to highlight, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the third of the four summer seminars we're gonna